Right, we are going to look at some practice multiple choice because I know you love multiple choice. Now, to make our lives even more enjoyable here, we have two booklets to bounce back and forth. So there will be some clumsiness attached. So we have a sources booklet and a questions booklet. And the topic is the spectrum, which we encounter in grade 11 and in grade 12. Let's get started. I always recommend that students look at the questions before the source so that they know why they're looking at the source. So question 1 says, which of the following concepts would most likely fit the area labeled A, B, and C? I might ponder the options. Natural rights. Invisible hand. That's more specific to economics. I'm thinking Adam Smith. Social contract, I know that Hobbes talked about it, Locke talked about that. That's why we agree to settle in a society, and inalienable rights. So now I go to the source. In the source we have this strange three-circled Venn like a diagram. Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, what did they all talk about? What did they all have in common? Well, they all did talk about a social contract. Even though they disagreed as to why we have one, they all talked about a social contract. So that's kind of a recall question, isn't it? Either you know it or you don't. So in order to get number 1 right, we need to know our cast of characters. What did they want? The role of government to be, the role of citizen. Why did we submit to the state? How did we submit to the state? Are we there to obey the state or to question the state? Who determines that the government's legitimate and accountable? Number 2, with regards to the above philosophers, Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau, who would present the strongest argument in favor of the mutual transferring of natural rights to the state in order to achieve security? So, thinking back, cast of characters, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, who was the one most committed to security? That's Hobbes. So again, much like number 1, number 2 is a recall. Taken to an extreme, those who defend the ideology attributed to the driver on the right would least likely wish to live in a nation built around Ricardo's iron law of wages, Marx's vision for a classless society. My printing's done. That's fun. The Lockean principle of inalienable rights, the Rousseauian concept of the general will. So Ricardo, iron law wages, Marx's classless society, Locke's principle in inalienable rights, Rousseau's general will. The person on the right would least likely wish to live. Let's take a look. Person on the right. The person on the right wants to privatize. They want tax cuts. So the person on the right is a capitalist. The opposite of a capitalist is Marxism. They least likely want to live in B, Marxist vision for a classless society. When a nation is facing an economic crisis, we can assume that from the source, the driver on the right would oppose government budgets based on austerity. To understand A, we need to know what the word austerity means. That means budget cuts. People that want capitalism, they like budget cuts, so they wouldn't be opposed to it, so it can't be that. The person on the left would advocate for the government to increase spending on social programs. Well, let's look at the person on the left. Person on the left. Researchers reveal many van drivers are orientated towards family, friends, and community. A collectivist. A collectivist would advocate for government to increase spending. Yes, they would. B's my answer. As a continuation of the logic presented in the source, we can assume that the moral recommendation of Hobbes would be to have the state promote the individuality of the citizens. Well, that's the opposite of what Hobbes wanted, unless moral recommendation is used ironically or something. The ideas of Smith are biased towards those members of society in 1776 that had a vested interest in resisting change. Capitalism was innovative in 1776, so I don't see that. Principles of the Chartists stood in opposition to the wave of individualism released through the Age of Reason. No, they wanted more democracy. Crusading zeal of those selling the views of individualism has sparked reactionary resistance among conservative Muslims. Of course that. The crusading zeal of Americanism, right, of American individualism has sparked, we saw it with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, has sparked very much reactionary resistance among those. Maybe ultra-conservative might be a better term than just conservative. Taken together in order, as Source 1 suggests, to give dignity to what has been scorned, we can assume that the cartoonists from Source 2 would support the government's plan to provide humanitarian food aid, provide freedom through government welfare programs, create legislation that promotes the principles of capitalism or redistribute income. So, taken together, in order to give dignity to who has been scorned, the cartoonist from Source 2. So we have to go and look and see what is the perspective of the cartoonist in 2. Cartoonist in 2 is critical of big government because they're providing welfare but no escape from poverty. They want the free market answer because through freedom, more rungs of it, these people will actually be able to get up. So the cartoonist is pro-capitalist. So taken together, to give dignity to those who have scorned, a capitalist would want a government to do what? To do less, right? Provide freedom through government programs? No, freedom from government. Create legislation that promotes the principles of capitalism. That's what a capitalist would want. C is your answer. In response to 1, Marx would suggest that in the end, the other plane of existence. So what's the goal of Marx? Is it tyranny? Is it violence? Is it class warfare? Warfare is meant to be the obstacle, the thing that we're trying to eliminate. Yes, violence is a means to end it, but egalitarianism is the goal. D is the answer. So a lot of recall in this test about how well you know your cast of characters. Which of the following groups would most likely be the they who the source believes would believe that this is freedom? Well, we're going to have to take a look at the source, aren't we? The world says you have needs, satisfy them. You have as much right as the rich and the mighty. Don't hesitate to satisfy your needs. Indeed, expand your needs and demand more. This is the worldly doctrine of today, and that is the belief that this is freedom. The result of the rich is isolation and suicide. For the poor, envy and murder. So, who's the they? The world says you have needs, satisfy them. Let's go back. Which of the following would be the they? The world says you have needs, satisfy them. You have as much right as the rich and the mighty. Don't hesitate to satisfy your needs. Indeed, expand your needs and demand more. This is the worldly doctrine of today, and they believe it is freedom. Now, they here are the people chasing this path to freedom by consuming, right? By consuming. So do we have something about consumption? Capitalists. That sounds right. Proletariat, workers of Marx? Nope. Classic conservatives? Nope. Enlightened followers. So this is a critique of capitalism. So the answer is A. The answer is A. Number 9. Based on the ideological perspective promoted by the source, we can assume that would be most sympathetic towards. So we have to figure out the perspective of the source is anti-capitalism. So it's sympathetic towards. What's the opposite? B is your answer. Yeah, let's spell foreign properly. There you go. An individual who wishes to combine the productive power of private property with an aggressive, militant, and ultranationalist foreign policy. So you like capitalism, but you're aggressive, you're militant, you're ultranationalist. That's fascism. And fascism is authoritarian capitalism. IV4. D. Individuals who are most offended by the claim that the truth is that men are tired of liberty would find themselves in which quadrant? Who would be most offended that we're tired of liberty? Somebody who wants liberty. So what is freedom plus freedom? Democratic capitalism. 2. B. When in 35 we had this observation that is in the midst of the Purett sewer that the greatest river of human industry springs up, they're promoting same thing, democratic capitalism. Based upon the provided quotation by Marx, he correctly predicted something. 13. What does he predict? And that is spelt properly because it's old English. The need of a constantly expanding market for his products chases the bourgeoisie over the whole surface of the globe. It must nest everywhere, settle everywhere, establish connections everywhere. Sounds like globalization, right? Globalization of commerce. C. The strongest evidence to continue the perspective presented by the cartoonist is, what's the perspective? Guns over butter. People are suffering. Undemocratic power of the MIC, the military-industrial complex. Could see that. Or the economic reasons leading to the fall of the Soviet Union. So which one, A or D, do we have more starvation? A is your answer, right? A, there was more poverty. There's poverty in America, absolutely. But America's looking at it. D is looking at it more from a political spin, right? A is looking at it more as the economic consequences, and it's focused on the poverty situation here, not the unrepresented political wills. So that's why it's A. According to someone who identifies with position D from source one, the most acceptable solution. So we got to go back and say, what's D? D is a reactionary, so a solution is, well, revolutionary violence. Let's see here. Economic spectrum, that's capitalism. See, I had to go back. I said reactionary, I thought it was a political spectrum. So laissez-faire capitalism would want industrial paternalism. That's the one option here that involves the least amount of government. So then it's up to the goodwill of the capitalist. It's their choice to be charitable, not their taxation, not their burden. Those most offended by the perspective of the cartoonist from 3 would identify with which position from 1. So this one's anti-capitalist, saying the party boss is corrupt. So those most offended by the perspective would identify with which position from 1. That would be capitalist again, because it's criticizing capitalism. The cartoonist in 4 is suggesting that in order to avoid chaos, we must first do something. Cartoonist in 4 is saying in order to avoid chaos, what's the first step of chaos? Allowing labor to take these steps down? Well, we have to stop labor. We have to get rid of unions. So we have to restrict the collective rights of labor. A. 18. Based on details within the source 5, we can conclude that a Georgist, someone who believes in Henry George, would be an individual who, well, I remember Henry George wanted public property. Somebody who believes in George is C. Believes that economic value derived from land should be held collectively. And I can go back and look at the source and make sure I'm right. This is a critique of private property. C is my answer. 19. Taken as a set, the source that promotes an ideological perspective furthest from the others. So which one, 2, 3, 4, or 5 is most different? So we'd have to go and say, okay, 5 is A on the left, right? 4 is anti-left. 3 is on the left. 2 is on the left. So 2, 3, 4, 5. The only one that was anti-left, pro-capitalist, is 4. So 4's got to be my answer. And then number 20, in response to Richard Hooker's claim, and is the claim even on here? No, I'm going to have to add that. In response to his claim that the Industrial Revolution changed the soul of mankind. Oh, okay, we don't need the claim. It's said about it there. Source 2 would suggest that it has regulated our exploitive nature. Well, they do talk about exploitation there. It's unleashed it though, right? 3 would suggest that it has limited our corrupt tendencies. Seems like we're being more corrupt. 4 would suggest that collectivism will solve our ills. 4 is anti-collectivism. 5 would suggest that wealth created by land should be shared. Absolutely, it says that. So that's got to be my answer. D is my answer. There's your answer key. And that's how quickly you should rate your test. Control End.